Hello, welcome. Episode 272. The Hotel Without the Statues update. That's pretty much all I could come up with, I think. A couple of episodes ago, I did a podcast about a hotel in Dublin that's basically removed some statues. There's 4 statues, they've been there 150 years. And the insinuation from the hotel was that in the current climate, which would suggest that these were, somehow maybe offensive statues, and that I don't think anybody complained. I think it was raised a few years ago. Somebody mentioned something to someone about the statues, but I don't believe there was a movement to have them removed. So there's been a debate over what they actually depict, these statues, and obviously the hotel felt that at least 2 of them were slaves, and that's obviously inappropriate. They're Egyptian. They were not modelled on anybody. They were commissioned about 150 odd years ago, and the word slaves or slave was not used during the commissioning or by the artist who created the sculptures. So I think that's quite interesting. So there's an art historian anyway. So on Friday, a couple of days ago, there's an article on this particular the journal.ie about an art historian explaining why these are not slaves. And there's some very interesting points raised really. So there's lots of photographs now of them missing, which is awful sad now. But I do know if you go onto Google Maps and you can see them. You can drop into Stevens Green and they're there. Like I'm sure that if they run the car around, they're not going to be there for much longer. But I mean, obviously you can go back in time, can't you, with Google Maps? So basically, there was a few things. So there's 4 figures, and for some reason, it was 2 princesses and 2 of the slaves. I think at least 2 of them was meant to be slaves. But there's some very interesting features about these statues. I mean, the first thing, of course, is there was never any mention of slaves, slave girls, or anything else when they were commissioned, So that's the first thing, of course. They are a work of art as well, more than anything. During that era, it was like a real, what's the word now? It was really posh, and it was really in vogue to use Egyptian imagery and iconography around the place, So iconography, got it there. But so basically, when we look at the statues and it's Kyle Laden, he lectures at the University of London, who's talking to RTE. He really wants drive time program. And he was saying that in the printed catalogue, the man who originally created and sculpted the statues does not actually refer to them as slaves. He did not intend them to be read as slaves. So what's interesting is there were meant to be 2 princesses and 2 slaves, but there's some very interesting things about the 4 of them in that they had this anklet is that what it's called, and a lot of people pointed that to be they're in chains, but it's a bit confusing why the princesses would be wearing them as well as the slaves. So certainly the historian would say that, well, this is just an adornment. It's not a manacle or a shackle or anything to do with slavery. Another thing as well, of course, is that they were wearing very expensive clothes, high quality materials, all 4 of them, which is interesting in the sense of if usually slaves are depicted naked or in very bad clothes. It's unusual to dress your slaves up. I don't know quite sure how that works, but they were wearing expensive silk and had golden headbands. So it's definitely, I think, in Egyptomania, I think is what he refers to the statues as of that period in history, and it was in vogue. So you have Egyptian things on your posh buildings, So they're all wearing the same anklets, That's the first thing. They're all wearing expensive clothes, all 4 of them, And there was something else that was mentioned as well, that the heads were bowed as if in a submissive, subservient manner, indicative of a slave. And I think that's also been addressed by this the art expert here now, basically saying that they're actually at 12 feet in height is the where they're displayed outside the hotel. So if you're at ground level, if the statue was looking straight ahead or looking upwards, you wouldn't see the face of the statue, you know. So by having the heads bowed slightly or looking down, you can look at the face of the statue, and it sort of makes perfect sense, you know. So from the evidence so far, there's very little apart from somebody's opinion that they were slaves or they were somehow to do with slavery. That, you know, there's any connection with it being a slave issue, as it were, you know, which I find very interesting. So they were being removed. It was last Monday, it's Sunday now. They've been in a week. They've been gone, and it's interesting. I think one of them has been broken. I'm not sure if it's beyond repair, but I don't know where we go from here really, because you know, the hotel, they could refuse to put them back, I suppose, because they did it in the first place. Then you've got the situation, I think, with the planning and the council, because you can't remove structures, you know, from the city centre like that. You know, they are protected. Are they going to take action? And what action are they going to take? Are they going to find them? Are they going to force them to put them back up again? You know, it's interesting. So I'd be intrigued to see how this plays out. I thought it was important though to have this update, just so that you know, there's more information as to, you know, on the face of it, you could argue they're slaves, they're manacled, whatever, you know, and they represent, you know, a dark part of history. Or you could look at it that it was this Egyptomania, this, you know, obsession with anything connected to Egypt, and that, you know, these were actually, you know, not slaves, but, you know, princesses, and they're an adornment on a building, they're an art fixture, you know, and I think I mentioned it before about art. Art is very subjective, you know. Art can be, art's, to some people, they embrace all art. It's part of being human. It's fantastic. But other people can get very offended with art, you know, maybe if it includes nudity or violence or topics that they themselves are offended by. But what I think is interesting is that I don't believe removing it is the answer, necessarily, you know. I mean, it's been there 150 years, you know, it's been there a long time, and I consider it as an artwork. It's a sculpture, it's done by an artist is creating an artwork, and you know what, I'm probably, you know, pretty certain there might be people out there who are offended by this artwork, and I think that's okay. I mean, it's impossible sometimes not to offend people, and people get offended at the littlest things. But it's part of being human, I suppose, to have that, and I think it can be a very personal thing, you know. And there's a lot about that sort of era that, you know, there isn't very nice. But I'm not convinced that these four statues, you know, should have been removed. And my feeling is they should be put back again, and then we should move on with our lives. You know?